Morning. Everybody can hear me. My name is Gunish. He's given my introduction, and I think quite a few people know me or have maybe interacted with me. I'm going to talk today about integration of supply chain. Volume, theek hai? It's too high. Okay. Everybody can hear, right? Okay. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about integration of supply chain and achieving business excellence through an integration of supply chain. And won't talk too much about technology. People know me as a tech person, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about some simple operational concepts which I think we should think about. So like I say in every presentation when I come to this conference, my idea is not to give you any solutions. My idea is to make you think. And it's going to be a little thought-provoking about how and what we should be thinking as companies, as business people, and the strategies we need to adopt. So with that said, outsourcing versus in-house. If anybody's done operations and supply chain and operations strategy, this is a very classic question people ask themselves. Should I outsource an activity or bring it in-house? Now, what does that really mean? Let me give a few examples. Should I outsource my stitching or bring it in-house? 20 years ago, it was mostly outsourced. Today, later on, we were forced to bring it in-house. We didn't have a strategy behind it. People do job working outsourced. Embroidery is outsourced. Some people bring it in-house. Now, there are pros and cons to that. And what I'm going to talk a little bit about today is what should be our approach to this particular problem. And it's got outsourcing versus in-house has got its pluses and minuses. Okay. What is the benefit of outsourcing? And we can all look at that chart and know about it. Of course, outsourcing gives you flexibility. So if let's say I don't own a printing mill, I can outsource it. Whenever I need printing, I get it done. Versus if I had it in-house, I had the own printing mill, there's a cost associated. I don't have that flexibility. But outsourcing, the advantages, the disadvantages, there's lack of reliability. Okay, we are dealing with this problem of lack of reliability. Is the mill idle or not? Do they have capacity or not? We are trying to struggle with that problem. Other challenges are, benefits are no fixed costs. You can quickly gain capabilities. I don't know embroidery. I find a person who knows embroidery. I said, you please do this garment for me. I don't need to build the capabilities because building capabilities takes a while. And specialized units. So if I'm only doing, let's say, a particular type of garment, I get pretty good at it. So companies and retailers outsource that to me because I'm very good at it. Example, H&M used to manufacture their garments themselves. They've stopped it about 35 years ago. Now, obviously, they didn't have lack of management talent, lack of money, lack of orders. They didn't lack it. They didn't even lack the capability to build capacities and build businesses across the world. They've done it across the world, right? But they very quickly realized that they cannot be ever as efficient as a garment exporter sitting on his factory and running the show. And similarly, you will notice that in your supply chain, the efficiency is higher when you're outsourced. The particular unit is doing more efficient. So, of course, there are a number of disadvantages. Lack of reliability, you have higher incremental cost because every time you do a transaction, the person has to not only get his fixed cost, but also get the margin. Lack of control and driving compliance and driving change in a vendor is much more difficult if you've outsourced it. So I think those are some of the classic challenges of in-house versus outsourcing. And today I was going to talk a little bit about what is the approach companies are now taking to this. So it's no longer become a either or. It's actually become, I want all the benefits of outsourcing and I want all the benefits of in-house. Okay? That is an operation strategy which I think all of us need to really think about. We have been largely driven by the strategies of our buyers. बायर ने बोला कि इन हाउस करो, क्यों करो? बिकॉज बोला कि कंप्लायंस ट्रैक करनी बड़ी मुश्किल होती है आप लोगों की. एज अ रिजल्ट ऑफ इट आवर कंपनीज एफिशिएंसीज हैव कम डाउन. 20 years ago anybody can say, and I can say most of the audience can say, they could manufacture more shirts per operator than today. I mean, I think there is no doubt about that, right? Because it was outsourced, the fabricator, and today if buyers could allow us, forget about the cost of ESI, PF, etc., whatever compliance is, the fabricator will be more efficient than most of us, because they don't have those overheads, they don't have all that. Okay, so what do we do? There's an industry trend which has happened, and you will notice it, and this, what's happened is most retailers are now reducing the number of vendors they want to work with. I'm sure people have heard that trend. Gap is trying to cut down vendors. Every major retailer is cutting down the number of vendors. They want to have deeper engagements with vendors, and there's a reason behind it. And I think we need to understand why this is happening, because they have been working on a traditionally outsourced model, and they've realized that to be able to really manage their supply chain, they need to have fewer suppliers and deeper engagement with suppliers. I think that's big. That has big implications for us. So what do we do in this kind of a changing scenario where the industry is consolidating? Rather than having 500 vendors, you have 40 suppliers doing fabrics, 15 suppliers doing this, because we are diversifying risks. Does that make sense to diversify risk? And I think again, there's no right answer or wrong answer to this. I think the idea is to think about it. So fewer vendors, that's a big industry trend across the board. Fewer vendors, deeper engagements, and more strategic engagements than transactional relationships with vendors. Okay. So the crazy problem of buffers I'll talk about, and this is, people could, few years ago, this was, I mean, I noticed this a few years ago, but of course, I don't know if it's happening today or not. But let's forget about vendors and this. Let's talk about our own companies. 20 years ago, I remember those days where order used to come, we used to book an order, buyer ne order sheets bheji. Sorry, I'll go to Hindi a little bit. I'm assuming everybody knows Hindi, but I think anecdotes are better told in Hindi a little bit. Buyer ne order bheja, हमने शाम को order sheets पकड़ी, शाम को फैब्रिक कैलकुलेशन करी, फ़ोन खुद करा, फैब्रिक सप्लायर को ये ले फैब्रिक पकड़ 10,000 मीटर का ऑर्डर तेरे को दिया, 15,000 का ये दिया, शाम तक फैब्रिक ऑर्डर हो जाता था, and we are done, and we actually ball is rolling. Today, what is happening? Today we have to have file handover ho, या indent sheet handover ho. A lot of those processes have been added. Now there is a benefit to it, but what's really happened is that something which used to take a few hours for us to do, of course scale has changed, is now taking us maybe a week, 7 days. And I'll talk about statistics. I mean, the statistics show that probably from the time the order is being placed to the time the material is being placed, the requisitions are being made, 6 to 7 days is the average in our industry. 6 days lost. And I'll talk about, I mean, cost of 6 days, we can do some mathematics, is unbelievable. The problem is buffers. Buffers means merchandiser ना order की actual delivery date छुपा के रखता था. कभी होता है कंपनी से, पहले तो होता था कि 2 हफ्ते का ना उसको कम बताओ, actual order delivery date अपने production वालों को मत बताओ. This used to happen. I don't know if it's still happening in any company, but the production person knows कि क्या हो रहा है. उसको तो वैसे ही पता है कि 2 हफ्ते, तो वो सोच रहा है 3 हफ्ते का बफर रखा हुआ है. ठीक है, क्योंकि उसको पता है कि जब 2 हफ्ते पहले कर दे, जब टाइम पे करता है कि शिपमेंट वहीं कार्टन वहीं पड़े हुए हैं फिनिश गुड्स एरिया में, तो उसको पता है कि यार इनके पास वो टाइम होता है. Similarly, the buffer is the fabric vendor gives a buffer, says मैं 20 दिन में फैब्रिक दूंगा, उसका जो रनर है वो बोलता है जी 25 दिन में आएगा, और जो फैब्रिक वाला हेड है बोलता है जी 5 दिन और ऐड कर ले, 30 दिन में आ जाएगा, और वो अपने बायर को जो मर्चेंडाइजर कन्वे करेगी 40 दिन में आएगा. And nobody knows because there is no accountability, there is nothing. And this is a killer to the business, absolute killer, because people then get used to slipping. Slippages are fine. But the only slippage which is not acceptable is वो डिस्काउंट आ जाएगा, सो वो स्लिपेज होती ही नहीं है. सो किसी तरीके से रोप पिट कर हम लोग शिपमेंट भेज देते हैं टाइम पे, बट एट व्हाट कॉस्ट. सो दिस इज समथिंग व्हिच वी नीड टू रियली थिंक अबाउट द कल्चर, एंड इट हैज अ ह्यूज इम्पैक्ट ऑन द कल्चर ऑफ द कंपनी, ह्यूज इम्पैक्ट. So one advice to all of you, if you didn't take anything else from this presentation, stop this buffer thing. I mean, it is unacceptable. Let people know exactly when you need it. Okay. So my suggestion to this is a new word. I mean, I've not heard this before, which is not outsourcing or in-house, but insourcing. And I think companies need to figure out how do we develop an insourcing capability. And insourcing is essentially different companies working as a single entity. Our challenge in our companies is even the same entity is not working as a single entity. Merchandiser अलग है, fabric department अलग है, production अलग है, PPC अलग है, trim वाले अलग कर रहे हैं काम, everybody is trying to hand over, वो एक दूसरे को everybody is, you know, and in fact the information is not even flowing between those entities. So regardless of, what ends up happening, very quickly the problem has to go to the boss, वो सबको इकट्ठा करेगा, भैया क्या हो रहा है, and they sort it out. Okay, but there is no peer-to-peer interaction, which I would say a peer-to-peer civil interaction. I will not even, interaction is there, but it's not civil. No, it's more of, why did you ask me this question and why you asking, why should I reply to you? खुद fabric source करके देखो तो पता चलेगा, खुद production करके देखो तो पता चलेगा, right? So I think this is something which people need to really think about, this concept of insourcing. And this is what essentially, if you really look at, if you cut the clutter, you will find this is what retailers are really doing. When they're cutting down the number of vendors, what they're really essentially doing is building this insourcing capability, which means fewer vendors, deeper engagements. The vendor is no longer involved just at the stage ki bhai they are actually bringing in vendors saying, I want you to be involved when I'm conceptualizing my range for the year, my look for the year. Not at the point where I have got my tech pack ready. When tech pack ready is ready and then you are sending it, it's actually a transactional relationship. It's not a deep engagement. Similarly, let's think about what we are going to do about it in our own companies. Stop me whenever how much time, because I know I tend to go a little bit higher on time. So the first problem we need to crack is the problem of trust. And I talked about buffers, I talked about these things, but I think this needs a much more deeper thought, because definitely I can tell you, when you are able to insource, there's a huge advantage to it. Trust means a few things. Can I involve my fabric vendor at the time of quotation stage and actually discuss with him the quotation? Which buyer it is, what the buyer is really asking for, or do I want to keep hiding it? पता नहीं information कहाँ चली जाएगी, किसको जाएगी, क्या होगा? At what point do you involve your vendors in your? So is it because the later you involve your vendors, the more surprises you are giving to him or her, and the more surprises you will get yourself. So at what point do you involve your? When I say supply chain, not only I say supply chain, I say actually supply chain doesn't mean just a vendor. Supply chain, if you have production, PD team, at what point do you involve your production team? At what point? And I think that's a very important aspect. And so I think one of the things we need to address about is the problem of trust, and how do we figure out to make sure people are able to interact with each other and have visibility into each other's actions and what they are doing. So for example, if a buyer is giving me an inquiry, मैं सिर्फ उसको बस बोलता हूँ मुझे fabric चाहिए. Maybe I will say, the buyer is looking for this, can you give me some options? But trust is a two-way thing. So when you are discussing it, what is the vendor looking for? Vendor is looking for, अच्छा मैंने ये सब काम कर दिया, मेरे को order ना मिले, ₹2 के लिए order चली जाएगा. Okay, so there are certain, I think one problem we need to look at is trust, and this is a much more deeper, probably, I can do a whole seminar on trust, so we can go into more details on this. Second is the problem of local maximization. Anybody can tell me what that means, or local maximization? Anybody? So to nahi rahe, main jaag rahe ho na. Everybody is watching Chandrayaan, but I just want everybody to be awake. Huh? So no answers, nothing. Local maximization. Local maximization is simply saying I am trying to maximize everybody is trying to maximize their profits or their thing. So for example, I am a embroidery job worker. माई लोकल मैक्सिमाइजेशन मीन्स कि फैक्ट्री की मेरी एम्ब्रॉयडरी मशीन है 24 घंटे चलनी चाहिए, ठीक है. नाउ फॉर दैट टू हैपन आई हैव टू डील विद अनसर्टेनिटी, ऑर्डर अनसर्टेनिटी, कभी आएगा नहीं आएगा पता नहीं क्या होगा. सो व्हाट डू आई डू? आई ऑलवेज कीप 10 days ऑफ इन्वेंट्री मेरे पास पड़ा होना चाहिए. ऑर्डर लाते रहे, लाइन मतलब द गारमेंट इज वेटिंग फॉर द मशीन शुड नेवर बी वेटिंग फॉर अ गारमेंट, because if the utilization falls by 10%, I'll probably lose 2 rupees a embroidery garment to 2 rupees that embroidery, because for that guy 2 rupees is he's locally maximizing his gains. But in that extra he's made a lead time of 20 days, as a result of which probably the main garment vendor is not being able to get the orders because उसको लग रहा है 20 दिन में अगर embroidery आएगी तो I'm done, I'll not be able to execute the order. And in the entire cake, the two of them, between them, would have made about 50 rupees extra. But वो अपने 2 रुपए बचाने के लिए पूरे सिस्टम का 50 रुपए का नुकसान हुआ है. So I think companies, we need to really crack this problem of local maximization and figure out, and there are ways to handle it. There are ways to take care of it. So, for example, do you book capacities with your vendors? And I know there's commitments, there are a lot of other things associated with, but or you have dedicated vendors. There's a lot of other areas, but har ke pros and cons hain. But I think we need to, one of the things we need to look at is tackling this problem of local maximization. So what is an in-source supply chain? And I'll kind of wrap up. I think I have 5 more minutes.
Yeah, 5 minutes. And what I propose to do once you finish, I'll open the house for 2-3 questions so that everyone is relevant.
Okay. Okay, so I'll wrap up even faster.
So 5 minutes you have.
Okay. So what is a in-source supply chain? First, vendors and customers have visibility to each other's important business processes. And when I say vendor and customer, I don't only mean vendors and suppliers, etc. I mean one department to another department. Do they have visibility into each other's important processes? That means the only time I hear from the other guy is not just because when somebody sends me an email and requests something from me. Do I have visibility without asking him questions? Do I have visibility into their processes? Okay. Pre-negotiated rates with capacity utilization brands agreed upon. I think there are ways, like I told you about this agency problem, local maximization problem. I think there are ways to again handle it, and these are just ideas. I'm sure people have other better ideas to figure it out. Third, lines between a buyer and a suppliers have been blurred. So co-creation, everybody's heard of concept of co-creation. Aajkal there's a big buzzword, co-creation. Styles are being co-created with buyers. Ranges are being co-created. So you're getting involved. So the line, who is the buyer, who is the supplier, really in terms of an organization structure, it's only a commercial arrangement, that's it. Other than that, the teams work pretty much like a single entity. So within companies, the lines have to get blurred. Fabric team बिल्कुल अलग चल रही है, merchandising अलग team चल रही है, that's not going to work. The lines have to blur. Okay, and again, people can have different strategies and different approaches to how do you do it, but I think it's important to look at that. Fewer departments, I just was talking about it, fewer departments. The world is moving towards fewer departments. The world is moving away from very, very specialized people, because the more departments you have, the more areas you have to coordinate things from. And the moment you have more steps to coordinate between the reliability, the supply chain, the communication goes exponentially. It is not arithmetic progression, it is a geometric progression. Focus on medium and long-term plans, and I don't have much time, but I think how many of us sit with our suppliers and have a discussion on our medium to long-term plans? How many of us? We don't. Because we've always had an approach of transactional relationship with our vendors, with most of our vendors. Forget about vendors, we have a transactional relationship with a lot of our employees. I mean, for us, an operator is just an operator. It's a transactional relationship. पैसे देते हैं, वो time देता है. That's it. So I think focus on medium and long-term goals and having a discussion with them is very, very important to first build that sensitivity and awareness of how to have an integrated supply chain. Focus on identifying correct partners, and I'll final point, I think identifying the right partner is actually a very, very important skill set we need to build as companies. Who's the right guy? Who's got the right mindset? If you get the right person with the right mindset, something can be worked upon. So a trust can be developed, a lot of things can be worked upon, and they can actually think and work with you as partners and solution providers rather than having an adversarial relationship with them. Okay. So some enablers to outsourcing: technology, of course, critical. Uske bina ka anybody thinking they can do without it is, it's not going to happen. Culture. You have to have a culture where one, people are comfortable discussing their strategies, discussing what they are wanting. It is very, very important, because if the culture is not put in, it won't work. And I think हमारे लिए ना बड़ा simple है. Look at our customers. I mean, our retailers and buyers are the people who we just follow them, what they are doing. These people are a few years ahead of us. You understand what they are doing, and you really understand why they are doing it, and you'll understand what you need to do to remain relevant. So the question is, as a vendor to a supplier, do you want to be their in-sourced vendor or do you want to be their outsourced vendor? And that's a decision all of us need to take. Because when you're an in-sourced vendor, the buyer really values you for something different than just the fact that you supply him a garment. Okay. Global maximization approach. I talked about this 50 rupees, 2 rupees conundrum and why this is a big problem, agency problem. And I think somebody in your team and organization has to keep thinking about this particular problem, this local maximization versus global maximization problem. Okay. Planning, a lot of planning needed. Planning is not just line planning, that is very transactional again. Planning talks about how do you have a business plan? What is your plan for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years? How are you going to be relevant? And once that plan has been discussed, what is needed from the entire supply chain? Again, I say supply chain is not a vendor base or this, is the entire organization. So the entire organization is like a supply chain. What needs to be done to be able to align all of that to those business plans? First of all, you communicate to them, it will happen. Then only is the first step to make it happen, right? If we are just thinking it in our head, no, for them everything is a surprise. Money to be made, huge money to be made. And I think as we can have again discussions on the kind of numbers we are talking about. So insourcing, final, what are the benefits? No fixed costs. You have outsourced it, but there are no fixed costs. Incremental costs are lower because you've actually negotiated with them. So for example, if I'm working with the printing mill, why do you have to negotiate rates again? Let's fix up rates for the next 1 year or 6 months and say this is what you're going to commit me X number of pieces. Do we have conversations like this with our vendors? X number of pieces, X number of meters you're going to commit to me. 5 color print ka ye rate hone wala, 7 color print ka ye rate hone wala, 1500 meter ka. Can we, because if you give them visibility, they can actually work on a plan. You reduce their uncertainty. The moment you reduce somebody's uncertainty, they will actually give you that benefit. They'll value you more. Okay. High visibility. Rather than to order aaya, nahi aaya, we keep them on tenterhooks. We keep people on tenterhooks. Should we give them, yaar, ye ho raha hai mere saath yaar. हम डरते हैं to communicate what is happening with us. But should we keep them on tenterhooks? Okay, sometimes we think it's a good negotiating strategy, but it's not. Okay, sorry. Thank you, tha inme. Fewer surprises. Fewer surprises. Surprises are killers. Nobody likes surprises. Nobody, not even your dog, likes surprises. No animal likes surprises. As living beings, we hate surprises. We are wired for hating surprises. And we hate the people who give us surprises. I think very important. Partnership approach leading to higher compliance. Deeper engagements, fewer vendors have that approach and say, I'm going to work with this vendor. I'm going to help him improve. I'm going to build his capabilities. I'm going to build the capabilities of my vendor. So a merchandiser ka vendor hai PD department, let us say. Can the merchandiser help the capabilities of their PD? Can the production department help build the capabilities of their fabric or X department? Their vendor. Okay. Lower lead times, elimination of buffers. You have lower lead times because you have a much more assurance on capacity. You know that, for example, if I go to a embroidery vendor and say, देखो, मैं आपको order कम से कम आपकी 4 मशीनें मैं on an average busy रखूँगा, but the moment I give you the order, within 2 days it should be on your embroidery machines. Can we have an arrangement with that? First step, of course, is to identify it. अगर हम बोले नहीं वो चोरी है, vendor ही ऐसा बेवकूफ, लोग ऐसे ही बोलते हैं. That means you chose the wrong guy. So I think vetting and getting the right And there are people around there. Let's not be as cynical. We are not the only good people in the world. There are others also, hopefully. So I think lower lead times, elimination of buffers, and better quality. You have better quality when you have a integrated supply chain. So you got the benefits of efficiencies, you got the benefit of reliability, and I think this is something which people need to think about in terms of how do we do it. There are a lot of technology enablers. There are now platforms available where interaction can happen, where information can be exchanged. A lot of enablers to that, but I think culture is very, very critical to that. And with that said, I think, thank you so much.
Thank you, Gunish. You spoke with passion, and it was a reality check for all of us. What is happening inside the factory we go through every day. So now the house is open, and I'll allow you a few questions so that we can move to the next panelist. Please.
Actually, if you look at automobile sector, and I'm deliberately taking automobile sector because these problems have been overcome in other sectors as well. But automobile industry is as old as garment industry, and they've been able to overcome it, right? They outsource left, right, and center. They have partnerships with their vendors. Toyota break this barrier of trust way back in 70s. So what is kind of stopping the garment industry from doing it? Right? Why has it taken the garment industry so much time to do it?
Okay. Why?
Would people also like to think?
I think, unfortunately, our garment industry, export houses actually had a lot of buffers. So we didn't need to really tighten our belt to the extent that probably the auto sector had to do it. I think if I really look at, we have to introspect and be honest to ourselves. But I think more importantly, I think the challenge has been that our supply chain has been very fragmented. If you look at the auto sector, frankly, probably there are 10 major companies in India, and that's it. 5 major or 8 major companies. So they drove it very, very strongly. But if you look at the garment industry, the retailers, they have hundreds and hundreds of brands. So the retailers themselves had a very transactional relationship with the garment manufacturing base. As a result of which, we always were trained to be very transactional in our relationship with our entire chain. I think as things are moving, as retailers are consolidating, I think the realization is happening that, look, that way of working is no longer going to work. So when we were always used to transactional relationships, we thought that is the way things will work. I think now it is changing. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think it is. But I think there are better stalwarts in the industry who can probably tell me a little bit more of why it happens and why it's happening.
So yes, please.
I can say why it is happening. Because in the garment industry, it's that much easier to change a vendor. But in the automobile industry, you have seat people, you have people making brakes, people making this. It's not that easy to change your vendors because there are very specialized vendors. In garment, I need a shirt. There are hundreds of vendors and I can move relatively easily.
I think, Sanjeev, that's a kind of giving us a free pass. It's not that case. I think it's got to do with the mindset. I think more importantly, and I think it's just the exposure we've had. You have to understand this industry is not been built by engineers, and it's built by fashion people who are kind of more independent thinkers and kind of like to do their own stuff.
What he's saying is valid point. When you have less because in automobile industry, you have to develop a vendor. It takes a lot of time.
Garment maybe.
Commitment. You have an option to change and maybe buyer accept, we accept, or somebody else. I don't know.
Anyway, we think we can. I think there are. Yes, relatively speaking, maybe, but I think not knowing too much about the auto sector, I don't know. But I still feel that it's been more of the mindset and the way we've been brought up.
Let's move to the next question. Gunish has another workshop later on. We can do that. Yes, please.
See, Gunish, you talked about local maximization, trust. So my question is that we all talk about it, but the key is when there is a breakdown, how do you react? Our reaction is move to next, or let's not do with him. So how do we react to a breakdown in terms of when we are changing our path from this to that? is what makes it different. So how do normally people react is what makes us change this industry. What do you think?
Short answer is culture. That's it. I think culture. That's why I had culture as red. So I think culture is important. How do you react to this? Whenever there's a breakdown.
Gunish, would you like to say something?
Culture is something that will teach you to go through every aspect.
So, thank you, Gunish.